I'm genuinely curious if taller and more attractive guys get approached by women, or do they still have to make a move? I'm 5 feet 10 inches myself for reference. My gym friend, who is 22 years old, 6 feet 5 inches tall, and extremely good-looking by all standards, never gets approached, aside from a few looks from women. One girl who was clearly staring at him, I went up and asked why she didn't introduce herself. I said, "My friend is single." She replied, "I don't think he will like me and probably gets way cuter girls." I told him, and he went and introduced himself, and now they have been dating for over 4 weeks. It's that simple. Are women really that scared to approach and make a move, especially toward a taller and more attractive guy? Story 1. I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall. I mostly get approached in the grocery store by older women who need help reaching items from high shelves. Story 2. Very rarely, and only in environments like bars or parties, have I been approached. Typically, it's more of a stare and awkwardness. Less attractive women have been more forward with me. Story 3. I am 6 feet 4 inches tall and have never been approached. The closest I have experienced is when a girl stared at me and followed me around a bar for about an hour. If that is what women consider making a move, it seems rather disappointing. Story 4. That's a paradox. Unattractive people aren't approached because they are not desirable, but most beautiful people also aren't approached because everyone assumes they have someone due to their appearance. When they do try to express themselves, people assume they are lying or cheating since it is not possible to have a great personality and good looks. Story 5. Yes, despite being a bit taller than 6 feet 3 inches, I can count the number of times I have been approached for something romantic or sexual with one hand during my 30-plus years. So yes, the argument that, of course, he's in a relationship because he's tall really doesn't ring true in my experience. Otherwise, I wouldn't have struggled at all with women growing up since I have been taller than 6 feet since I was 12. Instead, what really helped was when I got my first girlfriend at age 18. I really learned how to talk to women, be confident and outgoing, and that is when things changed for me. Story 6. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall and cannot remember the last time I was approached. It's entirely possible that it has been at least 15 years. Story 7. I am 6 feet 3 inches tall. My wife, along with the 2 previous serious relationships before her, were the ones who approached me. I did not have the same success when it came to approaching women as they did with me. Story 8. I'm not 6 feet 5 inches tall, but I am 6 feet and have strong facial features with blue eyes and around 10% body fat. I've been approached about 2 times a year outside of the bar scene. Usually, it's just glances or some stares or giggling while playing with hair nearby. What I found interesting is that girls I thought disliked me actually went out of their way to hide their interest. It doesn't help that I'm shy. I've had opportunities that I took, which wouldn't have come my way if I wasn't considered attractive. A lot of them I overlooked when I was younger because I struggled with low self-esteem due to a difficult childhood. Most men, even attractive ones, typically won't get approached outside of the bar scene. Story 9. I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall, and I've never been approached by a woman I haven't met before. I'm not ugly, but I'm also not handsome. Story 10. I'm about 6 feet 2 inches tall, and get approached on nights out maybe once or twice per occasion. As in a woman comes up to me and starts a conversation. I wouldn't get too caught up on height, though. I think it's far more important to be good-looking and present yourself well. I'm also more focused on having a good time with my friends, which I think unconsciously makes you appear approachable. Laughing, dancing, and so on. Some guys really stalk the bars like panthers or just stand off to the side of a dance floor checking out women. I get the feeling women might not receive good energy from that. Story 11. Older women ask me to help them reach Siggy's yogurt from the top shelf. I need nothing else in this world. Story 12. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall. I often get approached to reach items on high shelves or in cabinets. I could count on one hand how many times I have been approached without being the one to initiate it. Story 13. I am 6 feet 3 inches tall, fit, and reasonably attractive. I have been approached by women 5 times that I can remember, including twice in high school. It does not happen as much as shorter men think it does. Story 14. Historically, Hardly anyone ever approached another person directly. The overwhelming majority of couples were either formally arranged marriages or semi-arranged, where the man and woman grew up in the same village and knew each other their entire lives. The current situation is evolutionarily abnormal, so it is not surprising that many of us struggle to navigate it. Everyone could practice a little more forgiveness. Story 15. I am 51 years old and stand at 6 feet 5 inches tall. It has happened occasionally, but usually it's more about how easy it is if I show a little interest. When I was in my 20s, women would approach me and flirt, but it was never that common. I usually had to make some kind of move. Now that I am older and not going out to clubs, no woman approaches me cold out of nowhere. However, I still receive plenty of looks, smiles, and flirting. When I go out on a first date through an app, the dates almost always go well. So, I still feel I have the advantage. Story 16. Getting approached is more about attitude. It's rarely going to be like when men approach women, where looks do most of the attraction work. Men need to appear open and safe, in addition to being generally attractive. Story 17. I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall and not a model, but I'm often told I look brooding in a handsome way. As I got older, I noticed that some women would position themselves in my line of sight and hover while glancing at me. Usually, I would be standing somewhere, and as they walked by, they would glance at me the first time. Then they would walk back, stand nearby, and keep glancing at me. I'm naturally shy, so I've never approached anyone to confirm this, but once, when I started to walk away, a girl actually followed me and said, "Hey, I wanted to talk to you." Story 18. Being tall isn't the advantage you might think. I am 6 feet 7 inches and have been called a terrifying giant. Feels like I just can't win. Story 19. Usually, if I do, it's at a bar and it's a woman I don't want to be with. I'm a good-looking guy seeking a good-looking woman. High-value women have learned they don't need to approach, so quite simply, they don't. I wouldn't approach either if I didn't have to. Story 20. I am a 6'2" man and consider myself above average looking. I have been approached by some bold women in public and online through social media. However, women tend to prefer being pursued. Particularly when it comes to attractive women, they are accustomed to being approached and rarely take the initiative themselves. Additionally, gender norms dictate that men are expected to make the first move. Story 21. I am 6 feet 4 inches tall, and the last time a woman approached me was a week ago while I was leaving work. She was foreign, from somewhere in Eastern Europe, and came up to me to say, "I didn't know they made such handsome Viking men in this place," before introducing herself and trying to engage me in conversation. She didn't seem fazed when I mentioned going home to my wife, and she continued to ask for my phone number until I politely declined. This occurs frequently, much less when I don't go out and do things, but it still happens more than I would like. Usually, it's straightforward with compliments and suggestive language, but sometimes it's overly direct, as if some feel entitled to touch me. Either way, I don't really like it, even though I find it flattering. Story 22. I am 6 feet 4 inches tall, and I believe that my height has certainly helped me gain attention from women over the years. However, height is primarily an initial attraction that gets your foot in the door. Beyond that, it depends on your personality and your ability to make them feel good. Story 23. I'm 6 feet 7 inches tall and have never been approached by anyone except for older people asking for help to reach things, or by guys inquiring about basketball. Story 24. You definitely still have to make a move. I have been approached a couple of times, but not by girls I wanted to have interested in me. Story 25. I rarely get approached. Women are often more terrified of rejection than men. Men are accustomed to it, even if we take fewer risks than our fathers did. I've learned to recognize the signs that women are interested, and the less available I seem, the more interested they become. When I'm single, it can feel like a drought, but as soon as I meet someone, it's as if I'm wearing catnip, and suddenly many options appear. Story 26. My tall friends get approached all the time. I'm the shortest guy in the friend group, so it's rough for me, but I'm happy that they receive the attention. They are good people. Story 27. 6 feet 3 inches my whole adult life. Never approached by women. I believe that height increases the chances of success with your approach more than anything. Story 28. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall and went through a significant transformation in my life. I was a skinny skater kid, and occasionally a woman would approach me. I stopped skateboarding and started strength training and bodybuilding. Now, I am approached by women regularly, about once every 2 weeks. This happens especially when I have my kids with me at the grocery store, as women often ask me to shop with them. Story 29. I am 6 feet tall and have had a female companion since I was 15, with the exception of about 6 months. I never approached any of them. They all approached me. Height and experience in friend circles rarely have anything to do with it. Story 30. I am 6 feet 3 inches tall. When I was in better shape, I received more smiles and invitations to approach others, but that was about it. The only exception was my first girlfriend, who was a friend and insisted we be in a relationship. Story 31. This thread is the complete opposite of what I thought I would encounter. For reference, I am 6 feet tall and get approached fairly often by women, regardless of their attractiveness. However, I also go to the gym 6 days a week and have been told I am handsome since high school. I always figure taller guys had a cheat code to attract women. Story 32. I am 183 centimeters tall, and I am not American, so I am unfamiliar with feet. I often receive compliments from my friends about my appearance, yet I don't get approached very often. I suppose it's a self-confidence issue which also affects women, although it is rarely discussed despite being common. This usually happens with girls who share mutual friends with me. Story 33. 6 feet 4 inches, 325 pounds, shaved head, beard, and visible tattoos. I frequently get comments like, "Are you a professional wrestler?" or similar remarks about my size at least twice a month. I've had a couple of girls mention how I could easily toss them around with a smirk. I can't say I disliked being told that, but it has only happened a few times in my life and I'm 41 years old. Story 34. A bit under 6 feet 5 inches, and while in college, girls would sometimes ask, "How tall are you?" However, it wasn't like I would be walking through campus and have people asking for my number. There were certainly many nights when I would be standing just like everyone else, and no one would talk to me. Story 35. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall and Hispanic, with a lighter skin tone. This combination is quite rare. I've received some comments about it. People have approached me in grocery stores seeking help to reach items on high shelves. I've also noticed that women often look at me. When I speak in Spanish, I sometimes attract attention. Once, a woman heard me speaking Spanish at a bar, introduced me to her friend, and gave me her phone number, which I never used because I was married at the time. I didn't mention my marriage to them, which boosted my ego, but I did eventually tell my wife. The only time my height led to a significant connection was after my divorce. A beautiful petite Latina approached me at a Tejano club and was impressed by my height. We chatted for a while, and she gave me her phone number. In short, we were friends with benefits for several years until she met someone else and moved away. We remain friends and catch up occasionally. Story 36. I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall. Women don't approach me. Tall guys still have to do the same work as shorter guys. In my opinion, men who use height as an excuse are pathetic. My son is only 5 feet 10 inches tall, and he is incredibly good with women. It has more to do with confidence and personality than height. Story 37. As a 7-foot tall man, I have never been approached by a woman in a public place. However, I have received attention at swinger parties. Story 38. I am 6 feet 3 inches or 6 feet 4 inches tall and almost 30 years old. This year was the first time in my life that I have been regularly approached and flirted with. From simple compliments while getting coffee, such as, "I love your glasses," to more direct encounters like being approached while out to dinner and being called handsome. Something over the top happens almost every week. When I go to the nightclub, women will grab me and ask to kiss without any prior conversation. When I was younger, I was approached, but it was always less direct comments like, "You look like Superman," or "You look like a celebrity." I never considered or recognized it as flirting and only in retrospect realized that not everyone receives that type of attention. It's interesting to see the attention increase while on a personal level I feel and notice the effects of aging. Story 39. As a 6 feet 4 inches man who is conventionally attractive, I have noticed that the biggest factor increasing the attention I receive from women is my age. At 20, 25, and even 30, women did not find me as attractive as they do now at 38. Women are bold in expressing their interest. I am happily married, so there is no benefit to me, but it is remarkable how this attention continues to grow as I get older. Story 40. I am 201 centimeters tall, have blue eyes, and I wouldn't say I'm unattractive. I have never been approached and have never had a girlfriend. I might have a bad personality, to be honest. I am not confident, yet I do not really care about my looks. I have always had low self-esteem, too. It seems like height is valued much more on the other side of the pond than where I am from, although I am still very tall compared to my peers. Story 41. I get a few looks, but I was only approached once after high school. All the women I know are through friend circles. The older ladies, however, do not hesitate to speak their minds. An older woman once told me that if she were 50 years younger, I would need a restraining order. I found it amusing. Story 42. I'm 6 feet 5 inches tall, and when I was single, I was in good shape. The benefit of being tall for me wasn't necessarily being approached by interested women all the time. It was when I was standing at the bar, and the woman next to me saw me for the first time and said, "Wow, you're really tall," or "How tall are you?" It served as a conversation starter that I didn't have to initiate, and I usually took it to mean some level of interest. Story 43. 6 feet 3 inches. This started happening only after 9 months of gym and diet, and I grew a beard. Honestly, I think it's the beard more than anything else. Story 44. I have had a handful of people tell me I am above average in looks, but I am definitely not anyone's idea of exceptionally great looking. I am 6 feet 8 inches tall. Whenever I have been approached by a woman, it has almost always been about needing something from a high shelf in a store. The rest of the time, it has been about lifting something heavy or seeing someone or something. That is it. Otherwise, I may as well not exist. Story 45. It's more out of curiosity than interest. I'm 6 feet 8 inches tall, and while that may help, I'm more interested in how tall I am and similar aspects. On dating apps, I attract a lot of unattractive or unusual women. Story 46. I am 6 feet 3 inches tall and almost never have a negative experience. I find that many women seem to be randomly afraid of me more than anything else. I can sense that they become extra nervous if I happen to be walking behind them on the street or if it's just the two of us in an elevator. Story 47. I am 5 feet 5 inches tall and often get asked to retrieve items from the top shelf for others. I use my pogo stick to hop up and reach those high items for myself. Story 48. A cute guy at the bar caught my attention, which is rare. My friend and I sat next to him and we exchanged numbers. When he stood up to show me his motorcycle, I was surprised to discover he is 6 feet 5 inches tall. I fit into him perfectly. I've never dated anyone over 6 feet before, and it's been an interesting experience. He keeps saying I approached him, but I thought he approached me first. Story 49. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall and never get approached. Despite what women say they like, they often find tall men more intimidating than attractive. I know this because every female friend I have ever had has told me, "Oh my gosh, I was so scared the time I saw you." Story 50. If the girl is looking for a man in finance, he should have a trust fund, be 6 feet 5 inches tall, and have blue eyes. Story 51. Vertically impaired individuals often ask for my assistance in retrieving items from shelves. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall and weigh 190 pounds. I enjoy long walks on the beach. Story 52. I am 198 centimeters tall and a professional collector of high-end items for older women. I was approached by an attractive woman who was 192 centimeters tall. She mentioned that she liked men who were taller than her but rarely encountered any. This happened in a bar in Soho, London in 1993. Since then, I haven't had any similar experiences, as I have been married for 12 years and likely wouldn't notice these days. Story 53. I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall, and I wouldn't say I get approached that often, but I definitely receive subtle and blatant hints that women are interested. I can strike up small talk with any woman, and it quickly turns into heavy flirting, where most times I just keep it as friendly banter. Personally, I don't believe in marriage, and right now I'm too busy getting my workshop and business up and running. I'm too dedicated to that to want or have the time to start a committed relationship. As far as capacity goes, it all depends on the guy. I have several friends who are my height or taller, and I know for a fact that some of them don't get approached because they come off as intimidating or just outright strange. We are metalheads, but some still have the full-blown 1980s to 1990s metalhead look. Story 54. I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall, and I genuinely believe many women do not understand height properly. I once had a girl on a dating app tell me she was 5 feet 13 inches. The current trend of women looking for 6 feet 5 inches does not take into account that when you see someone that tall, they often look goofy and uncomfortable. Additionally, a typical girl who is 5 feet 4 inches looks unusual next to someone of that height. The extremes of how much women desire a tall guy versus how much shorter guys wish to be taller are both highly exaggerated, and it is unfortunate for both sides. Story 55. I spoke to a beautiful girl about this, and she was a perfect 10 in my eyes. She mentioned that she rarely gets approached by guys because many believe she is out of their league. Story 56. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall, very fit, not unattractive, have all my hair, and good teeth. I have been approached by women fewer than a dozen times in my life, and never once by a woman I was interested in. I definitely notice women checking me out, which feels great. When I did initiate approach as a single man, I had plenty of success, but getting approached simply does not happen. My assumption is that women are too timid and not used to risking rejection. When I started approaching, I was exactly like that, but the social pressure to approach and my desire made me do it anyway, and it got a lot easier with practice. If I felt like I had the option to just not do it, I probably wouldn't have. Story 57. I am just shy of 6 feet tall, and I get approached about once a month for sex. My secret? I married her 10 years ago. Story 58. It doesn't happen. I think it's more of a cultural issue than a matter of height, as the height aspect relates more to visual attraction. Tall individuals may not receive much positive attention. Additionally, if there is no prior rapport, men typically do not fare well in comparison to bears. Perhaps it occurred once when I was around 10 years old, but I'm not sure if I would count the actions of children in that manner. Story 59. I am 1.91 meters tall, which is 6 feet 3 inches. I rarely get approached by women, unless it is by shorter ladies who need help reaching something that is too high for them. I have been told I do not look bad. I have had my share of short-term relationships, a few long ones, and now I am in a very happy long-term relationship. More than one lady has told me I have a beautiful smile and that I look good. However, being approached is quite rare. People need to stop thinking that being tall guarantees constant attention from women. It makes things easier, I will concede that, but it is definitely not a guaranteed advantage. Story 60. I am 6 feet 8 inches tall and live in Germany. I don't go out as much anymore, but when I do, I get approached on average once per outing, either in a bar or a club. About 50% of the time, the woman approaching me does so because she is very tall and is looking for a guy she can wear heels around. I am not into tall girls. My fiancé is 5 feet 5 inches. I think being 6 feet 8 inches tall reaches a level of height that feels excessive. Story 61. I am 6 feet 3 inches tall, and the only people who approach me are those who need help with something on the upper shelf, or who are simply complimenting me by saying, "You are really tall." Story 62. I am 6 feet 4 inches tall, and I get approached at bars and clubs every time I go out, whether by a gay man or a woman. I do not often participate in public activities during the day, as my hobbies are mostly solo or home-based, so I cannot comment on being approached in those settings. It sounds like your friend is tall and handsome with a baby face, whereas I have a rougher appearance like a lumberjack, with softer features, including green or blue eyes. Story 63. 6 feet 1 inch, and it's usually, Can you help me with that item that's on a high shelf? I always do. To quote Monk, it's a blessing and a curse. Story 64. I'm not a man, but I don't really approach guys I find attractive because my automatic assumption is that they probably have a girlfriend and would be bothered by me approaching them. Story 65. Some women, not all women, are different. You need to adapt and see what each person needs when you approach someone you are attracted to. What we should consider is why she wouldn't approach. It may be due to negative beliefs she holds about herself. She is not a failure for thinking that way, but she seems to have a reluctance to talk to him because of certain experiences that may have conditioned her to be averse to approaching men. This can be logical, as we sometimes develop coping mechanisms that can be destructive to our love lives, making us view the world through an inaccurate lens. For example, due to past trauma, she might avoid situations because of something like being labeled in a derogatory way when she was younger. This might lead her to believe that she should not approach anyone, including someone she finds attractive, and instead wait for them to approach her. As a result, she may miss out on connections, particularly with someone she is very attracted to, such as a friend who would be a perfect match. Worst case, she might settle for someone she is not truly interested in or never find a partner at all. Consider if your friend is the ideal person but has his own reservations. He may refrain from approaching women because he is concerned about the possibility of false accusations, leading him to miss opportunities with receptive individuals. The key is to adapt in the moment and communicate openly about how partners wish to be treated. As long as they understand your intentions and that you are navigating your own concerns, you can create a more comfortable atmosphere for interaction. The point is to adjust to each person as situations vary. There are no universal rules that apply to every scenario. If you had not been there to talk to her, she might not have had the opportunity to question her beliefs or work through her pain to develop healthier perspectives. The issue at hand is not about the guy, but rather how she perceives things. What is the purpose of your question? What insights are you hoping to gain, and what motivates you to ask? I'm seeking to understand your perspective better. Story 66. This thread is interesting. I have a huge crush on a guy I met at a family gathering. He is really tall, athletic, smart, a graduate from an Ivy League school, and super handsome. We had small conversations about our professions since we both have the same major. I thought he must already have someone or get approached by many attractive girls. I am 22 years old and have an interesting personality, but not much in terms of looks. I'm barely 5 feet 1 inch tall and not athletic. I check his Instagram to see if he is in a relationship. I dream about him a lot, but don't know how to approach him. Our parents know each other well, so things could become complicated if it doesn't work out, and it might be awkward. I already have low self-esteem, and a rejection would crush me. Story 67. We often receive strange looks. Being tall is not the advantage many men believe it to be. Women can always find alternative reasons to decline interest. Story 68. I don't understand why some people think that being tall is an advantage. Why is it that every man under 6 feet has children? Please explain this. Height can be an advantage, but it doesn't guarantee success. If you don't take care of yourself and you're 5 feet 2 inches, even if you were to grow to 6 feet 5 inches, it wouldn't change much. Story 69. It is a common myth that tall and handsome individuals have no trouble attracting romantic partners. However, without putting in effort and focusing on self-improvement, attractive people can also struggle in this area. During my teenage years and early adulthood, I was awkward, self-deprecating, shy, and anxious. I rarely had girls approach me, while my shorter and less conventionally attractive peers often found new relationships because they had confidence, good communication skills, and various hobbies that helped them engage with others. After I worked on myself and improved my social skills, I found it easier to connect with others. It can be frustrating when people assume that being tall and handsome means I cannot relate to their challenges. In reality, I understand these struggles better than most. Story 70. I was approached by girls on the street twice. Both times they were in a group of friends and I assumed it was a prank. Story 71. I am 6 feet 6 inches tall. I do not often get approached by women, and even when I do, I cannot usually tell they are flirting until after the fact. Story 72. only in very specific contexts for me. It felt like a player going on my friend's 3-day bachelor party cruise because family cruise trips are usually over a week while the 3-day cruises are always chaotic. Women were quite bold, approaching our group and directly asking which of us were over 6 feet tall. One mentioned she had issues with her father and liked my beard. There were also many overly eager women at the cruise club. I'm married, so I was just turning people down, but it did boost my ego. Otherwise, this kind of attention has only happened at house parties or clubs and pretty rarely. Not that I consider myself particularly good-looking. I think I just appear approachable. Even my more attractive or successful friends experienced this more during our undergraduate years. Story 73. Tap deserve fertile subsequent marble pen toothbrush hobbies wasteful tub. Story 74. Well, tall, handsome men get approached more than the average man. It's not very common unless they are a movie star. Men are primed to make the first move and women reciprocate. That's just how it is, despite feminism. Women will hint at their interest by smiling more, making eye contact, and using body language, but they still mainly expect you to make a move. Story 75. I have been approached a few times, but it is not usual. What I notice is that I frequently have the opportunity to approach others, as indicated by nonverbal cues that they are open and interested. However, I am not sure if this occurs more or less often than it does for someone under 6 feet tall. Story 76. Bumble recently changed its policy to allow men to message first. This reflects how most women perceive the approach. Story 77. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall, and no woman has ever approached me. They have given me looks or signals, but I have always had to be the one to initiate the conversation. Story 78. I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall and have been approached once. She is my wife now. However, I have been approached by women on the street who are complete strangers. They come up acting like I am their best friend, as if we have known each other forever, because some creep is following or harassing them. Let me tell you, it is an honor every time it happens, and I definitely play along. Story 79. Honestly, with what she said about them getting cuter girls anyway, that is what I think about too, so I don't really bother anymore. Story 80. It helps for sure, but you need to be in the right environment. I have never been approached by a woman I don't know while just walking around on a normal day. However, when I go out to a bar or club, I get approached regularly. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall and fairly handsome. My current girlfriend's decision to approach me was based on the fact that she thought I was tall, cute, and wearing clothing that indicates my profession. Story 81. I'm not quite in the 6-foot club, but very close. When I see really tall men, I think wow and want to ask how tall they are for reference. I imagine it would be nice to see all the aisles in the supermarket at once. Once, I asked a particularly tall person, whose head was well above the top aisle, if he could find the sugar for me, and he did. Story 82. I don't approach men at all, even those I find very attractive. I consider 5 feet 8 inches and above to be tall, I guess because I'm 5 feet 3 inches. Story 83. In my hometown, I am approached rarely, about 2 times in the past 7 months. However, when I am in Washington, D.C. or New York City, I average 1 approach per night. I never get approached during the daytime, though. Story 84. I am 26 years old, 6 feet 3 inches tall, muscular, and considered attractive, although I haven't always been. A few years ago, I weighed 440 pounds but lost 120 pounds. Sometimes I get approached by women who are usually a few years older. It's not always direct, but I assume that when a random girl goes out of her way to talk to me, she is flirting. Recently, a girl I often see at the gym walked past my car while I was smoking and said, "Nice car." I recognized immediately that she was flirting because I drive a Buick Encore. Story 85. I'm 6 feet 2 inches, or 188 centimeters, more or less. I don't get approached, ever. My family says I'm good looking, but it does not seem like it. Whatever, I'm used to it and I still rock based on my standards. Story 86. I'm 6 feet 6 inches tall, and I was only approached once by my ex back then, and that was because of my clothing style, as she told me later on. So excluding that instance, it was a total of 0 times. Being tall doesn't matter if it hurts people's eyes to look at you. Story 87. It helps, but it is not the only factor. Height is just one of many considerations. You will not attract interest from women unless you possess several appealing traits. You need to be tall, attractive, fit, stylish, and appear affluent to gain the attention of women. Story 88. I am over 6 feet 3 inches tall, have lifted weights for decades, and have never been approached by anyone in my life. It might be due to intimidation, my beard, tattoos, or my slightly overweight strongman appearance. I am not certain at this point. I only know that all these men who think weightlifting is the answer to all of life's challenges are going to get a surprise. Story 89. I'm starting to think that the more handsome someone is, the less they are approached because others perceive them as being out of their league. Story 90. I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall. I'm definitely not a model, but I'm above average looking and fairly fit. I don't get approached often. I notice girls occasionally looking at me and smiling when I look back, but that's about it. Story 91. You still have to be attractive. It's not like being tall guarantees success with women, but it sure helps. I don't get approached often in public. Online, sure, but that doesn't show how tall I am. However, I am given the green light often. I've never approached a girl because I fear rejection, but honestly, I always attribute my success with women to my looks rather than my height. I believe that my height is a bonus but not the main feature. Of course, when you're dating, they are going to say, I love that you're tall, or I love how small I feel around you, or I love that I can sit on you, whatever it may be. But yeah, they have to say something. What are they going to say? Sweetheart, you're lucky I'm with you considering I hate tall guys? Story 92. I'm 6 feet 7 inches tall. I don't usually get approached, but at least once or twice a year, I catch someone staring at me. My most recent interaction was with a lady at the grocery store who told me she would let me run her over while I was walking past her with my grocery cart. At the time, I thought she was just implying that she was always in the way and that people could hit her, so she would move. My wife thinks there was a different meaning. Story 93. Honestly, as someone who is tall, I would say it's just as much as any other average person, which is almost never. Story 94. I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall, but I consider myself average. I've been approached only once in my life, not counting when someone asked me to reach something for them in a store. I'm 38 years old. Story 95. I'm a beautiful 6'4" sexy woman, but I am seldom approached or have any indicators of interest directed my way. To be fair, I don't really look for the latter, so maybe I'm missing them. Tinder works pretty well though. Story 96. I am 6 feet 2 inches tall, and no women seem to care about me. Either I am unappealing, or that extra inch makes all the difference. Story 97. From my perspective, even if someone did show interest in me, I have never realized it. If I'm being completely honest, I would say I'm about a 6 out of 10. Not bad, but not a knockout either. I have been directly approached with, hey, do you want to date? Exactly 3 times. I know this because I will never forget how I fumbled all 3 times. I feel like we wish our love lives were like the movies. In movies, you get the third-party perspective of everyone's point of view. In the real world, you only have your own perspective. There is probably someone looking at you right now, but you wouldn't know because you're not paying attention. Keep it up, everyone. Story 98. I can say that when I am single, getting matches on apps is fairly easy. I tend to let the liked me feature do most of the work and filter through it. In real life, the approach is rare. I usually don't pay much attention, and I still do most of my own work during initial interactions. I think, and this is based on a short time during a financial crunch when I had to drive for a ride-sharing service, that talking to a lot of women while picking them up from parties and clubs reveals that they are just as shy and nervous as men are. In some regard, the same fear of rejection exists, feeling out of my league. For women, there is often the fear of choosing the wrong man, typically influenced by past negative experiences. I have had a few attempts at flirting during those trips, but overall being approached? Not really. Being taller didn't lead to more real-life approaches. It did provide me with an advantage in initiating conversations. Looks are important, but they aren't everything. If you don't practice your personality and are too shy or nervous, that generally affects you much more than your height. Bad teeth? Time for the dentist or orthodontist. Acne? Consider skincare and dermatology. If you're skinny, work on developing more muscle to reach at least an athletic build. Hair can be changed. Being nervous or appearing unconfident gives off a negative vibe, and women often shy away from that because it can be misinterpreted as creepy, just as being overly cocky can come across as creepy. Control your body language. That will help you significantly. Story 99. Women want what they cannot have. If he approached her and expressed his interest, she would likely lose interest. Some women prefer to live in a fantasy rather than in reality. Story 100. I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall and 36 years old. I still get approached by women ages 21 to 28. I don't consider myself a particularly good-looking man. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, I would rate myself a 6 or 7. I guess height for men is like beauty for women. Story 101. Have you ever heard of Bumble, the dating app? The whole gimmick was that women made the first move. Men could not send the first message. Women had to message first, and then men could respond and a conversation could happen. They had to remove the feature of women sending the first message because they either rarely did, or when they did, it was often just, hey. I've had women who liked me before, but I never knew it until a mutual friend mentioned it 2 to 3 years later. They never showed any interest in me or treated me differently than anyone else. They hid their interest extremely well. I'm not over 6 feet tall, but I think it's relevant information. Women seem to have a mental block when it comes to initiating. And to anyone who needs it spelled out, I am speaking in general terms. Yes, I know women initiate sometimes, but it doesn't seem to be common enough for men to count on. Relax. Story 102. I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall and humbly, I consider myself attractive. However, as someone else put it, I never find myself in that situation. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, women seem to have no game. Story 103. My older brother is almost 6 feet 3 inches. When he goes to clubs, girls literally pull him into their group so he will dance with them. I have seen it happen firsthand, and it infuriates me every time I remind myself. Story 104. Do more attractive people get approached more than you? Why did you feel the need to ask this question? Yes, it's obvious. The sky is blue, and your more attractive friend is indeed more attractive. Story 105. Most women have little confidence in initiating romantic interactions. I have been approached a few times over the years, but more often than not, it involves heavy hinting, leaving the task of seduction to me. There is a reason why Bumble has stopped requiring women to make the first move. The app was filled with profiles questioning why men were not messaging first, and 99% of opening messages were a low risk, low effort, high. Story 106. Most women do not develop active dating skills. They are mostly passive or reactive. Dating is one area where gender roles have not changed at all over the past 50 years. Story 107. I was at a small rooftop bar off 24th in Austin, and a girl approached my tall friend, leaned in, and whispered something to him. He recoiled and said, "Gross." I raised an eyebrow and asked what happened. She apparently said, "I want your dick in my ass in the next 15 minutes. They weren't scared. Story 108. I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall and get approached occasionally, about once a month at least. I consider myself average in appearance and tend to keep to myself, as I am quite introverted. I have no issue with women expressing interest, as I never will initiate. I politely decline their offers unless they are overly persistent, in which case I resort to offending them to encourage them to leave me alone. I dislike doing this. It is not enjoyable. However, when they do not accept my refusal, offending them proves effective. I am not interested in dating or casual encounters, as they often lead to complications and heartache. Based on my experiences, I have found that I tend to get cheated on in long-term relationships, so I made a promise to myself to avoid that situation. I strive to be courteous and let them down gently, and most of the time they respond well. This does not occur frequently, perhaps once a month or every other month at most. While I appreciate the attention, it is not something I seek. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.